Everyone in this room still thinks I run this city from my legs. Bring her to me. If she's as good as they say, she just became the most important person in this city.
Not tonight.
Please, not tonight.
Hold him still. He doesn't get to pass out before I'm done. I don't care who he is. If he can save my son, I'll burn down every door in his way to get to him.
The black leather-trimmed titanium wheelchair cost as much as a house. It stood still, right in the center of a penthouse suite filled with the thick smell of expensive cigar smoke and uncounted stacks of cash. Marcus Vance looked down. His legs lay there, right beneath the fabric of custom Italian suit trousers, powerless, withered, motionless, 15 years, 180 months, thousands of long, agonizing days. That was how long Marcus ruled the entire South Side Chicago underworld from a seated position. He could decide a traitor's life with a single snap of his fingers. He controlled the largest logistics and shipping lanes in the Midwest. He was a ghost, a myth. The man who made cops and rival gangs hold their breath at the mere mention of his name. But he was helpless against his own body. Every world-round full the floor from Switzerland, every experimental surgeon from Japan had made the pilgrimage to this heavily guarded fortress. They took his money, a lot of money. They performed trial surgeries. They prescribed maximum dose narcotics. And ultimately, they bowed their heads and left. They told him with trembling voices that the nerve roots at his L4 vertebra were completely dead. They said walking was a miracle that would never happen. But they were wrong. 15 miles away, in a completely different reality, in a gritty, rusted-out boxing gym on a neglected corner of Southside Chicago, where the air was thick with sour sweat, dried blood, and cheap liniment oil. Nia Crawford was kneeling on the cracked concrete floor. Her faded blue medical scrubs smelled of industrial floor cleaner and the dust trap behind vents that had never been cleaned. Where the machines were small, callous, but they moved with absolute, terrifying precision across the shattered shoulder of an underground fighter who had just stepped off the canvas. A sharp, dry snap echoed through the room. The 6'3" powerhouse growled in agony, then exhaled as his shoulder joints slid back into place. He didn't need anesthesia. He couldn't afford health insurance. And Nia didn't need a fancy medical degree hanging on a wall to know exactly where his muscle tissues were trapped. She felt it, beneath the skin, with her hands. A man holding the power of life and death over a criminal empire, yet imprisoned in a paralyzed body. A single mother with less than $100 to her name, stripped of her license, yet possessing hands that could resurrect dead tissue. Two worlds, an invisible chasm, a contrast so sharp it suffocates. Chicago at night. The rain poured relentlessly, washing the smog of industrial factories into the potholed streets of the South Side. Nia walked. Her steps were fast, rhythmic, deliberate, the pace of a woman with no time to wait. Every single delayed minute had a price tag, in cash. Where the machines rattled the floor until midnight, she tightened her old denim jacket, worn thin at the elbows. The freezing wind bit through the fabric, grazing the sun-kissed skin of the 32-year-old mother. Her face carried the heavy lines of 16 hours of non-stop labor, but her eyes, the eyes of a ghetto mother, never lost their fire. Nia pushed open the rotting wooden door of her basement apartment. The smell of damp wallpaper and old heater exhaust rose to meet her. The room was cramped, empty. On a cheap plastic kitchen table, a thick stack of past-due utility bills, eviction notices, and medical invoices sat under a harsh fluorescent bulb. Beside them, a large medical-grade air purifier. It emitted sharp, intermittent beeps. The red warning light flashed. Its high-end HEPA filter was 3 months past its expiration date. It was on the verge of total failure. If it stopped, the mold spores in this damp basement would suffocate her son's lungs. Nia stepped quietly into the back room. Trey lay there, 9 years old, with an angelic face but heavy, wheezing breaths. Trey suffered from mild autism combined with severe chronic asthma. The dampness of this basement was his greatest enemy. Green rescue inhalers were scattered across his nightstand. Each one cost 3 days of Nia's under-the-table wages. Nia knelt by the edge of the bed. She gently placed her calloused hand over his chest. She felt every rapid heartbeat. every constriction of his tiny bronchioles. She closed her eyes. In her mind, the anatomy of his respiratory system mapped out like a thermal grid. She knew exactly how much he was hurting. She leaned down, whispering into his ear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Little Trey didn't open his eyes, but his frail chest began to rise and fall with her count. He liked numbers. Numbers were the only thing that kept an autistic child calm when the world got too loud, or when his lungs ran out of oxygen. Nia looked at him, her heart twisted. 5 years ago, life wasn't like this. She used to be a rising star in sports rehabilitation. She stood in the luxury medical rooms of major NBA teams. She had national certifications, respect, a brilliant future. Then her toxic ex-husband showed up. A bitter, vindictive divorce. He used dirty legal tricks, framing her for negligence that supposedly caused a young athlete's permanent injury. He destroyed her credit. He had her license revoked permanently. He threw her and rattled the floor until midnight, out onto the street on a freezing winter night. The legal system didn't protect the poor black woman. They looked at the tailored lawsuits of a wealthy man, and they turned away. From a medical professional, Nia was forced to run to Southside Chicago to hide. She took cash under the table, blood-stained cash, cash that reeked of the sweat of desperate men at the bottom of society. Nia stood up and walked to the living room. She looked into her peeling faux leather wallet, only 3 $10 bills left. This week, where the machines rattled the floor until midnight, had shorted her half pays. He told her she didn't have a license. He told her she did her a favor by giving her a place to hide from the law. He told her if she didn't like it, she could pack her bags and sleep on the curb tomorrow. Nia clenched her fists. Her fingernails dug into her palms until they bled. The injustice, the pressure of this broken system wanted to crush her. They wanted to see her cry. They wanted her to beg for scraps. But Nia Crawford didn't know how to kneel. She looked back at Trey's bedroom. The air purifier kept beeping, a countdown for her son's life. The pharmacy at the corner had flatly refused to give her another inhaler on credit. The pharmacist looked at her faded scrubs with that permanent contempt reserved for the ghetto poor. Nia wiped a stray drop of rain from her cheek. She didn't cry. This single mother was desperate, yes. She had nothing to lose, yes. But she possessed a pride as unyielding as cold steel. She would do anything, walk into the darkest places, touch the most dangerous men, as long as Trey lived, as long as her son could breathe. Where that night in the dark basement, Nia packed her specialized oils and tools into an old canvas bag. She didn't know it yet, but Chicago's underworld was watching her, and her fate, along with the boss in the wheelchair, was about to collide in a crash of blood and tears. The room was suffocating. Harris sat there, the boxing gym owner, overweight, teeth stained yellow. The cigar smoke blew straight into Nia's face. It burned her eyes. "My pay," Nia said. Her voice was cold. She didn't beg. Harris tossed 3 $10 bills onto the desk, exactly $30. Nia stared at him. Her fists clenched. "Our agreement was 300. He laughed, a wet coughing laugh that got caught in his throat. "Where's your license, girl?" Harris raised an eyebrow. "You're working under the table. You're lucky I don't call the cops. Take it. Or hit the bricks." Nia didn't say another word. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She picked up the $30, turned around, walked out. A mother's pride wouldn't let her kneel at the feet of a pig. But reality is brutal. The basement apartment was damp. The air purifier was beeping nonstop. Then it went dead. The screen went black. The filter was completely fried. Instantly, Trey had an attack. He curled up on the bed. His frail chest heaved violently. He was gasping for air, but his lungs wouldn't open. "Mom, can't breathe," he wheezed. His eyes were wide, pure panic. Nia tore through her backpack, the last rescue inhaler. It was empty, nothing but a hollow hiss of air. She ran, out into the street. The rain was coming down in sheets. Chicago at night was freezing. The rain hit her face like needles. The pharmacy at the end of the block. A dim neon sign buzzed in the dark. Nia banged on the glass door. The pharmacist looked at her soaked scrubs. His eyes were filled with pure disgust. "An albuterol inhaler, please," Nia gasped. She slammed the $30 onto the glass counter. "I'm $20 short. I'll bring it tomorrow." The pharmacist didn't even touch the money. He crossed his arms. "No cash, no medicine. Rules are rules." "My son is dying," her voice cracked. "Then take him to the county hospital," he said coldly, turning his back. "Stop bothering me." Nia stood frozen. in the middle of the pitch-black rain. That's how the system works. It doesn't care if the poor live or die. It only looks at the wallet. Naya went back to the basement. She knelt beside Trey. She used her hands, gently massaging her son's intercostal muscles. She counted out loud to soothe him. 1, 2, 3, 4. She forced her brain to stay sharp. She couldn't cry. Tears wouldn't save Trey. 2 a.m. Naya walked back to the boxing gym. She had forgotten her tool bag. The front door was unlocked. It was pitch black inside, but the smell was different, not the usual sour sweat. Expensive cologne, high-end leather. A massive shadow stood in the corner of the room. Malik, Marcus Vance's right-hand man. A 6'7" mountain of a man, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked like he was carved out of solid granite. Nia froze. Her hand gripped a pair of heavy medical shears in her pocket. "Nia Crawford," Malik spoke. His voice was deep, gravelly, like thunder rolling from underground. "Harris isn't here," Nia said coldly. "I just came for my things. I'm not looking for Harris." Malik stepped into the dim light, cutting through the window from the street lamp. "I'm looking for you." Malik looked down at Nia's hands. "This afternoon, I saw you fix that fighter's shattered shoulder. No anesthesia." But he didn't feel a thing. "Your hands, they're special." Nia didn't lower her shears. "I haven't done anything illegal." Malik didn't argue. He reached inside his leather coat. A heavy thud echoed. A thick brick of cash dropped onto the wooden table, bound by a thick rubber band. $20,000. Cash. Brand new $100 bills. The green hue of the money reflected in Nia's eyes. "What is this?" she asked. Her heart started racing. "Pay for 1 session," Malik said. "My employer needs you. He's been paralyzed for 15 years. Chronic pain torments him every night." The doctors gave up. Nia stared at the money. $20,000. That was a brand new air purifier. A whole year of rent. Trey's survival. "Why me?" Malik took a step closer. His massive presence made the air feel heavy, suffocating. "Because my boss doesn't need a theoretical doctor. He needs a mechanic for the human body. And we researched you. You used to be the best." Nia remained silent. She knew this world didn't give out free meals, especially not from men in expensive suits who show up at 2 in the morning. "What's the catch?" she asked. Malik looked at her, his eyes dead, devoid of emotion. "An SUV is waiting outside. You'll be blindfolded with a black silk scarf. No questions, no curiosity. Get there, do your job. If you give him relief, this becomes a weekly arrangement." He paused. His voice dropped an octave, carrying a bone-chilling threat. "But if you breathe a single word about what you see or where you go, your boy Trey will never wake up again." The name Trey left his mouth like a switchblade. Nia gasped. Her entire body shook with fury and terror. They knew about her son. They had a knife to her throat. A mother's instinct wanted her to lung forward, to drive those shears straight into his throat. But she looked at the cash. Then she thought about her son wheezing in that dark room at home. Maternal desperation crushed every ounce of personal fear. Nia lowered the shears. She swallowed the sob building in her chest. She stood tall, staring directly at the giant. "I need to bring my specialized oils and tools," Nia said. Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. It was sharp as ice. Malik gave a slight nod. He turned toward the door. "Let's move. The car doesn't wait." Nia grabbed the brick of cash, shoving it deep into her backpack. She followed him out. 10 minutes later, Nia Crawford sat in the back of a luxury armored SUV. A strip of black silk was tied tightly over her eyes. Total darkness took over. The car sped into the night, heading north through the pouring rain, heading toward the Fortress Mansion, where the ghost of Chicago was waiting for her. 2 brutal fates had just collided, and there was no turning back. The armored SUV's engine gave a soft shudder, then went dead. The door swung open. A freezing wind from Lake Michigan rushed into the cabin. It carried the sharp, salt tang of the water and the heavy scent of an oncoming storm. Malik stepped out first. He didn't say a word. He just extended a massive hand to guide Nia out of the back seat. Her eyes were still bound tightly by the black silk scarf. The total darkness made Nia's other senses sharper than ever. She could hear the heavy thud of combat boots from the guards outside, the metallic clink of tactical rifle slings hitting heavy utility belts. And then, the smell. Scent completely foreign to the Southside slums. Expensive sandalwood. Premium leather, the unmistakable aroma of raw power in deep pockets. Malik guided her up several stone steps. A heavy wooden door clicked shut behind them. The electronic deadbolt engaged with a cold digital snap. Tack. "We're here," Malik's gravelly voice rumbled close to her ear. The silk scarf was pulled away. The blinding light from a massive crystal chandelier dazed her for a second. Nia blinked. She was standing in a palatial bedroom lined with dark mahogany paneling. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooked the pitch-black waters of Lake Michigan, where furious waves were churning under the pouring rain. This single room was larger than 3 of her basement apartments combined. But what caught Nia's eye immediately was the brutal visual contrast. She stood there, in a pair of faded blue medical scrubs, worn thin at the knees. Her old sneakers were caked with dried mud and filth from the subway station. She reeked of dust, poverty, and the harsh reality of the ghetto. And she was standing squarely on a hand-woven Persian rug worth tens of thousands of dollars. And in the center of the room, positioned right near a roaring fireplace, Marcus Booker Vance sat in a matte black titanium wheelchair. His face was a masterpiece of sharp angles and cold detachment. Deep bronze skin, a clean, where the machines rattled the lore into midnight. High fade haircut touched with silvers were massive. His forearms were corded with thick muscle beneath a rolled-up black silk shirt, the result of 15 years of dragging his own body weight with his hands. But his legs, they lay completely motionless on the footrests. Thin, withered, a dead zone. Marcus didn't look at Nia. He stared blindly into the fire, swirling a crystal glass filled with an amber liquid. "Another fraud, Malik?" Marcus's voice was smooth, deep, but dripping with exhausted sarcasm. "I thought I told you I was done with these charlatans." Malik bowed his head, stepping back toward the window. "She's not a doctor, boss. She's a mechanic for the human body. Just give her an hour." Marcus finally turned his head, his gaze locked onto Nia. They were the eyes of a wounded, aging lion, piercing, intelligent, and filled with pure contempt. He took in her cheap scrubs, her calloused hands. "You look like a high school nurse, Miss Crawford," Marcus sneered, a humorless smile twitching on his lips. "What exactly is your methodology? Do you use crystals? Or are you just going to rub lavender oil on my dead legs and tell me my chakras are blocked?" The guards around the room shifted. The black barrels of their weapons seemed to tighten the very air around Nia, where the machines rattled the floor until midnight. A normal woman from the south side would have started shaking. She would have fallen to her knees in fear of the ghost of Chicago. But Nia Crawford didn't. Her fears had died 2 hours ago when her son couldn't draw a breath. Her desperation had hardened into an armor of cold steel, protecting her pride. Nia took a deep breath. She straightened her spine. She looked directly into the death stare of the mob boss. "I charge by the hour, Mr. Vance," Nia's voice rang out, steady, sharp, defiant. "I am here for $20,000 to buy a machine to keep my son alive. Whether you want to spend this hour throwing a tantrum like a child begging for pity, or letting me do my job, that is entirely up to you." The room fell into a suffocating dead silence. The crackle of the wood in the fireplace sounded like sudden gunshots. Malik, standing by the window, went completely rigid. No one, absolutely no one, had ever dared to speak to Marcus Vance like that. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds passed. Marcus stared at Nia. Then the corner of his mouth twitched upward. An arrogant, dangerous smile broke across his face. "Bold," Marcus said, setting his glass on the table. "I like people who aren't afraid to die." "Get on the table." Malik exhaled in relief, gesturing for the guards to step outside. The heavy wooden door clicked shut. In the room, it was just Nia, Marcus, and the dying fire. Marcus used his powerful arms, where the machines rattled the floor until midnight, a massive surge of muscle from his upper body, to hoist himself completely out of his wheelchair. He landed face down on the padded medical table by the window, breathing heavily through the face cradle. "Do your worst, Miss Crawford," Marcus muttered into the cushion. "I assure you I can't feel it anyway." Nia stepped forward. She took off her old denim jacket, hanging it over a chair. She rolled up her scrub sleeves. She took a deep breath, closing her eyes to let the sensitivity in her fingertips peak. Then, she placed both hands flat on Marcus Vance's lower back. The moment her skin made contact with his, Nia's mind halted. The anatomy of the mob boss mapped itself in her head. This wasn't a wasted body. Surgical scars were extensive, jagged railroad tracks cutting across his lumbar spine. But the real issue wasn't the bone. Nia moved her fingers, pressed lightly, then pressed deeper. She felt it. Over 15 years, his brain, desperate to protect the trauma site from the original blast, had ordered his body to lay down thick concrete-like layers of scar tissue. This dense fibrous webbing had clamped down, suffocating the peripheral nerve roots surrounding the injury. The million-dollar doctors had looked only at X-rays and MRIs. They were terrified of his Tui-somung breaking, so they treated him like glass. They operated on the bone, where the machines rattled the floor until midnight, and ignored his muscles. They had completely ignored the suffocating cage of connective tissue, choking the life out of his nerve. "You've been building a wall to protect this area for 15 years, Nia murmured, her thumbs tracing the rigid ridge of scar tissue. Nia's elbow remained driven, deep into the muscle of Marcus Vance's lower back. She didn't let up, not even a fraction. Marcus stopped breathing. The veins in his neck bulged like writhing snakes. His skin broke into a cold sweat. Pain. It wasn't a dull ache. It was a violent awakening, like someone driving a white-hot nail straight into a nervous system that had been frozen for 15 years. "Let go," Marcus growled through gritted teeth. His voice was stripped of that smooth, arrogant mob boss timbre. It shook. It carried a raw, primal panic. Nia didn't budge. She locked her shoulder joint. She threw another third of her body weight directly onto him. Sweat beaded on her forehead, dripping onto the broad bronze back of the mafia king. "No," Nia said, her voice dropping to a cold, hard edge. "You've been hiding behind this wall for 15 years, Marcus. Breathe. Don't fight me. If you fight me, you'll snap your own nerves." The real war began. A war between the healing hands of a desperate mother and the fossilized scar tissue of a monster. Nia Crawford didn't stroke. This wasn't some high-end luxury spa massage. She used her knuckles, her elbow, her forearm. She used every ounce of her strength to crush. She peeled away the fibrous layers choking his L4 vertebra. Deep beneath his skin, microadhesions were tearing apart. A microscopic sound only someone with Nia's gift could feel. It vibrated straight up through her fingertips. Marcus lay there, the undisputed king of Chicago's underworld, pinned to a medical table. He had taken bullets before. He had shrapnel ripped through his shoulder. He never blinks, never makes a sound in front of his soldiers. But this pain? It was merciless. It stripped him bare. It forced him to look at his own vulnerability. The dead zone was fighting back. "Jesus," Marcus gasped. He felt a flash of ice-cold electricity shoot down his left calf. Then a sudden wave of blistering heat burned the sole of his foot. Phantom sensations exploded in his brain. His nervous system was melting down. His mind panicked as strange, long-lost signals flooded back up his spinal cord. Nia didn't slow down. Her hands moved rhythmically, brutally. She dragged her thumbs deep along the base of his spine right next to the blast scar. She dug deeper, deeper, right into the suffocating nerve root. And then, at the far end of the table, Marcus's left foot, pale, withered, motionless for 15 years, it twitched. The mafia boss's big toe flexed downward a quarter of an inch, then went still. Nia froze. She pulled her hands back like she'd touched a live wire. Her breath caught loud in the dead silence of the room. She stared at his foot. Disbelieving her own eyes, Marcus suddenly shoved his elbows down. Using his brutal upper body strength, he hoisted his massive torso upward. He snapped his head around. His eyes locked onto his left foot. The room stood completely frozen. Nothing but the crackle of the fireplace and the storm battering the glass outside. The granite mask of the underworld king shattered. The stoic armor was gone. In its place was a look of pure frantic madness. Confusion. A man terrified of a miracle. Did it just move? Marcus's voice cracked. It was a raspy, broken whisper, like a child's. "Yes," Nia whispered back, her heart hammered so loud she thought he could hear it. It moved. Marcus turned his gaze back to her. His eyes were bloodshot, radiating a lethal, terrifying gravity. He reached out a massive corded arm and wrapped his fingers around Nia's wrist. Not hard enough to snap her bones, but firm enough to let her know he could crush her lifestyle in a second. "Nia Crawford," he hissed through his teeth. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "If you are giving me false hope, if this is just some sick muscle trick, I swear to God I'll have Malik drop you to the bottom of the lake." Nia didn't blink. She didn't look away from his death stare. The pride of a ghetto mother kept her eyes locked on his. "I'm not playing games with you. Your spinal cord isn't severed. It's just buried alive in your own scar tissue," Nia Crawford said, each word distinct, steady as stone. "I can't promise you'll run marathons, Marcus, But if you can handle this pain, I'll get you on your feet. Marcus stared at her for 30 endless seconds. Slowly, his fingers loosened around her wrist. He let his torso drop back onto the cushion, drawing a long, shaky breath. "Malik!" Marcus roared. The double doors burst open instantly. Malik stepped in, his hand already resting on the suppressed weapon beneath his jacket. "Clear the room!" Marcus Vance ordered, his voice returning to the icy, ruthless cadence of a king. "Lock down this information. Anyone outside the three of us who finds out about today, kill them." Malik looked at Naya, then down at the boss's foot. He nodded grimly. The concrete cage was broken. The first signal had been sent. The war for the throne of Chicago's ghost had officially begun. The change could not be hidden, not in Chicago's underworld, where every breath the boss took was butchered into rumors. Silas Vance stood at the Southside docks. He flicked his cigar ash, his narrow eyes full of cold calculation. For weeks, Marcus had been different. The hollow, defeated look of a crippled man was gone. His color was back. His orders were sharper, cutting through the syndicate like a razor. And the biggest detail? Malik, his most loyal shadow, kept driving an armored SUV to pick up a civilian woman twice a week, using a black silk blindfold. "The cripple is dying," Silas hissed through his teeth. That is what he chose to believe. He thought Marcus was hiring a back-alley doctor to stretch his final breaths, desperate to hide the syndicate's growing weakness. "Find out who that woman is," Silas ordered his men. "Grab her. I want to know exactly how much time the man in that chair has left." Thursday night, an old, rusted subway station on the south side. Naya Crawford stepped out of the pharmacy. She clutched her canvas backpack tightly to her chest. Inside were 3 brand-new albuterol rescue inhalers, bought with the cash deposit Marcus had given her. The street lights flickered, buzzing in the dark. Rain beat relentlessly against the corrugated tin roofs. Then came the footsteps behind her, fast, heavy. Naya picked up her pace, too late. Where the machines rattled the floor until midnight, a powerful arm wrapped around her waist, dragging her backward into a pitch-black alley between 2 derelict brick buildings. Her cheap faux leather wallet dropped into a puddle of mud. "Shut your mouth, bitch!" A gravelly voice, reeking of cheap liquor, hissed in her ear. Naya was slammed hard against the rough brick wall. The impact knocked the breath straight from her lungs. 3 Vam-Vo men in dark hoodies surrounded her. The leader pulled a switchblade. The blade caught the dim light, tracing her cheek, ice cold. "What are you doing at the Vance mansion?" Gang asked, pressing the steel into her skin. "Marcus is circling the drain, isn't he? Talk, or I'll carve your face." Naya Crawford bit her lip until it bled. She stayed silent. She knew exactly who these men were. Silas's rabble. The goon ripped her backpack away, tearing the zipper open. He dumped the medicine bottles onto the wet asphalt, brought his heavy combat boot down, and crushed them. Crush. The plastic shattered. The precious medical liquid washed away into the dirty rain. "Still not talking?" The leader sneered, leaning his ugly face inches from hers. "We know about your kid, little Trey, suffocating in that moldy basement. What do you think happens if his breathing machine suddenly loses power tonight? How many minutes do you think he'll last?" Trey. The name hit her like a bullet to the heart. Pure, unadulterated terror seized her. For herself, for her son. "Don't touch my son." Naya's voice choked. Her eyes flooded with tears, but a raw, burning hatred took over. She would die before she broke her pride. She would die before she sold out the man who gave her the cash to save her boy. The goon raised his fist to strike. Screech! Heavy tires tore through the asphalt. LED headlights flooded the alley, pinning the 3 thugs in a stark white glare. The SUV doors flew open. Malik stepped out. No warnings, no wasted words. Fuck. 2 muffled thuds from a suppressed pistol echoed through the brick walls. The 2 Taisei collapsed onto the filthy ground, their knees shattered into bone fragments. The leader panicked. He let Naya go, scrambled over a chain-link fence, and vanished into the dark. Nia sank to her knees. Her entire body shook violently. Malik walked over. He picked up her old wallet from the mud, then lifted her up with a gentleness that defied his giant, terrifying frame. "They know about Trey." Naya sobbed, clutching Malik's sleeve. They threatened to unplug his machine. Malik didn't say a word. He pulled out a burner phone and hit a single speed dial button. "Boss," Silas's men. They put hands on Naya, and they threatened the boy. The other end went dead silent for 3 seconds. Then a voice rumbled, low, icy. a tone that made even the giant Malik straighten his spine. Get the child. Lock down the mansion. The war begins. An hour later, the fortress mansion. Naya stepped into the grand parlor. Bruises were already forming on her arm, where the machines rattled the floor and at the shoulder. Behind her, Malik carried Trey. The boy was asleep, safely curled in a thick woolen blanket. Marcus Booker Vance sat in his wheelchair in the shadows. The moment his eyes caught the dark purple marks on Nia's skin, the moment he saw her frayed hair and pale face, the mob boss's eyes flared with a lethal, terrifying light. It was the primal fury of an apex predator whose territory had been breached, whose ultimate boundary had been crossed. They touched you? Marcus's voice dropped into a low, vibrating rumble that shook the room. The temperature seemed to plummet. Silas wants to know if you're dying, Nia said. Her voice trembled, but she didn't shatter. I didn't give them anything, but they know where Trey is. Marcus looked at Malik. Take the boy to the east wing. He turned back to Naya. Slowly, the ruthless king reached out a large, rough hand. His fingers lightly brushed the scratch on her cheek. His hand trembled slightly. A strange, foreign ache bloomed in the chest of a man who had lived 15 years in cold, brutal isolation. You're not just an employee anymore, Nia, Marcus said, each word heavy as lead. You are the woman dragging me out of the grave. Silas just signed his death warrant. The next morning, Marcus Vance turned the mansion into an unbreachable foul die. Money didn't matter. 3 of the top pediatric pulmonologists in the country were flown in via private helicopter. The entire East Wing was gutted and rebuilt. Antibacterial walls, medical-grade HEPA filtration systems, $1 million setup installed in less than 24 hours. The machines hummed with a quiet, reassuring rhythm. That night, Naya stood in the corridor, looking through the glass. Little Trey was sleeping on a plush feather mattress. His chest rose and fell evenly. No coughing fits, no gasping for air. His face was completely at peace, a sight Nia hadn't seen since the day he was born. Nia pressed her forehead against the glass. Tears fell silently down her cheeks, not from despair this time, but from the sheer weight of relief. A massive shadow fell over her shoulder. The familiar scent of sandalwood enveloped her. Marcus's wheelchair stopped beside her. He didn't look at her. He looked at the child inside. He is safe here, Marcus said. His voice was low but fixed like an oath. Under my roof, by my life. Anyone who wants to touch your son, they will have to walk over the corpses of the entire Chicago underworld first. Naya turned to look at him. Between the darkness of the hallway and the warm gold light from Trey's room, she realized something. The man in that wheelchair wasn't just fighting for his legs anymore. He was reclaiming his right to be a king, to protect what was his. The darkness outside was rising, but the predator's cage was set. This family? He would keep them.